Okay, we're here again today for another episode of what we're calling the hall class, and that's quite literally what happened here. I was walking through the hall, Lamar Going was sitting there, and I grabbed him by the arm and brought him into a room, and we're going to interview Lamar. So maybe you want to say hi to everybody here, Lamar.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lamar.
So Lamar, tell us, I guess start and ask the background question, but tell us about your family first. Tell me, who everybody is. And
Is or was or all of the above.
all the above.
Right now, my wife, Carla, and I live in Solana Beach in the house I grew up in. And our granddaughter, Summer, has been with us for the last 10 years. And life wouldn't be as sweet as it is without her in our home. We love it. My parents have both passed on. I grew up in this area, as I mentioned. I lived in Solana Beach, born in 1953, certified old guy and loving every minute of it. And I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, 1973 to 1975 in Hong Kong, speaking Cantonese. So I've lived around. I've lived in several states. And obviously in Hong Kong. I am a graduate of San Diego High School, now known as San Diego Academy. And as far as college is concerned, school rather bored me. So I thought I would get right into the workforce, and actually for me it was the right decision. It was great. I work very well with my hands. I'm a monkey see, monkey do kind of guy. Right after high school, I became an apprentice electrician. And from 1971 till 1993, I was an electrician and electrical contractor with 2 years out for the mission served in China. My grandfather, Lionel Going, my father's father, was the first branch president in this area. And for those of you not familiar with our church, that means the first minister responsible for a congregation. And over the years, he and my grandmother have served in many positions in the church, but most prominent among those, at least in my mind, in 1947 they were called to go to Tonga, the island of Tonga, because my grandfather was a builder, a very accomplished builder. He was given the task, or assigned the task, to supervise the construction of the Liahona College in Tonga, which took them 3 years. And they were not proselyting missionaries, although their examples did attract people who came into the church because of their curiosity. As soon as they came back, they reported on their 3 years in Tonga and were immediately assigned to go back to Samoa for 3 more years.
Do the same thing?
Do the same thing. Build churches, schools, homes, some roads, a lot of things. When they left Tonga, the Queen of Tonga gave them a state feast and presented them with the kava root, which is a great honor. And I have their journals, and I've read those journals a number of times. To me, they're scripture, because they tell about miracles of many different types. But it tells about those journals teach me, or have taught me, the value of faith and commitment and love. Love is the chief driving force behind it all. So enough on that. Let's see, my mother's parents were, my grandfather was a career Navy man. And he was a simple man with a great heart, and my grandmother as well. They're gone also, of course. And now my brother Ken and I are what I call the old folk, the OGs in the family. And we're the leading edge.
Let me go back and ask a couple follow-up questions you're making me think of. So, well, you talked about your grandparents. Tell us briefly about your mom and dad as well. They grew up here in the area.
My father grew up in Utah. He was born in Bingham, Utah. I think it was a mining area. And he was born in 1925, and his awareness came to life during the Depression. And he was the middle child of three, older and younger sister, and all three of them have passed now. Both of my grandfathers and my father served in World War II. So that interrupted their lives.
Wait, your grandfathers and your father served in World War II?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big military history there.
Two Navy families, and my father was in the Army. And he was a machine gunner, so he had a very dangerous position, as all soldiers do. Served in the Pacific Theater, Mindanao in the Philippines, and New Guinea. Came home with diphtheria, malaria, a number of tropical diseases. Spent about 6 months in the hospital, and they discharged him with 100% disability, which he ignored and rejected and said, "No, thank you. I'll take the pension, but no, I'm not disabled." He was a cabinet maker his whole life, following in his father's footsteps. But my father's story is like unto many of my forefathers' service. He was the first bishop of the San Diego Ward, which was organized in 1962, or I believe 1962. I was at that meeting where we were dissolved. We, meaning the region body of church members, were known as a district at that time. And my father was in the district presidency, which is the three priesthood men who are called to organize and run the affairs of the church.
So then he was called to be the bishop?
He was in the meeting where they dissolved the district and created a stake, which is a bigger version of a district. He was called to be the bishop of that ward, and I mean that's where he was called. He
didn't know beforehand?
He did not know beforehand, and I will never forget the look on his face, the deer in the headlights. And after the meeting, he said, "They never asked me." And that's been a wonderful lesson to me and a funny story. Both.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you grew up here in the area. What was your childhood like in the area?
This was a small town. These were nothing like they are now. I say these, I mean North County towns and cities. We were part of the county, not the city of Solana Beach. That was created in the 80s, 1986 or 89, I believe. And we lived on a 2-lane road, which is now a 4-lane, 5-lane road named Loma Santa Fe. At that time, it was called Skyline Drive. And we knew our neighbors. There was a little lady across the street. In my mind, I see this, I'll use the word spinster, which is a completely, totally politically incorrect word and out of favor. But she was a little old widow lady who lived directly across the street. And I'd go over there dressed in my denim overalls as a 4 or 5-year-old, barefoot. "What you doing?" And she and I would garden. Well, she'd garden and she tolerated and loved me. And one day, this is something I'll never forget either, she told me, "I'm moving to Pennsylvania." I had no idea what that meant. So I went home and told my mom she's going to move and grow pencils. Next to her was an older couple named Sand. His name was Kroom, Kroom. Kroom Sand, and he was a tailor. He had a tailor shop there. And and these are good memories. At the end of our block was the church building.
I've seen the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather designed that, and the church members built it.
Did you help build?
No, I was
Too young at the time?
Yeah, I was. Let's see, that was dedicated in 1947.
So back then, did you have, you know, Flower Hill and all the little malls and complexes, or where did you go to shop? I'm just kind of curious what Solana Beach looked like at that time.
Solana Beach had a few stores. We had a shoe store, Marshall's shoe store, which is now the dog washing place.
So were all the stores along the beach on the one?
Yeah, they were on the 101. There was a store next to the railroad tracks and Loma Santa Fe Drive. It's now a small furniture store. It's red.
Right.
And that was Eric's store. Eric was a Scandinavian guy.
Mm.
And it was the forerunner of 7-Eleven and convenience stores. We did have a Speedy Mart that came about in about 1970. No, before then, it was 65 probably. And our milkman stopped doing his milk route, and he opened that store.
Wow.
He later died of tetanus, which is weird. You
Wow.
never hear about these things anymore.
I didn't know. Yeah, no, definitely not. What about high school? So you went to San Diego. What did you like to do in high school? Were you in, I imagine, surfing, or what else did you do?
I loved to surf. I loved to work on cars. I would buy and trade cars like socks. And at one point, about 30 years ago, I totaled up the number of cars I had, and at that time it had been like in the 70s.
Mm.
I just love cars, and I can't do that. I can't do it because they're too expensive, and I can't work on them myself. It's a young man's game, and but those were my passions, and working with my hands has always been a passion. First in my dad's cabinet shop, then as I became an electrician. I loved to take things apart and put them back together. And that's what fascinated me. School bored me, and I did not get good grades until somebody figured out, hey, he needs advanced classes. And then I flourished. I only had two. I had English and history. But they challenged me finally. And that was an eye-opener, but it didn't open my eyes till about 15 years later.
What was the surf culture like back then?
The surf culture was more friendly. It was very local. Everybody knew each other. We used longboards until the shortboards came in the 60s. And I had an Ocean Pacific surfboard, an OP surfboard. So if I had that now, it would be worth thousands of dollars. We all knew each other. And was there tribalism and territory disputes? Yeah, but not like what I hear they are now. I don't surf anymore. But everything was more free. We had freedom to do things that we don't have now. And nothing that I'm going to complain about. It's just that things change. We dive. We'd go dive. I was a free diver. We'd swim out to the kelp patties and free dive with the Hawaiian slings and bring home halibut and bass and sheep's head. And I had a wonderful boyhood, wonderful childhood. It was great. There were issues. It was during Vietnam, and my father was very concerned and that we might be called to go and serve in Vietnam. Fortunately, or it was a great blessing that my brother and I both had high draft numbers. The lottery came out, and my number was 324. So for those of you who don't know what that means, it means I didn't have to go. But the nation was being torn apart by the political nature of that war. And there were, it was the days of drugs and the sexual revolution and things like that. And I look back at the young people with whom I grew up in this area, and sadly, many of them didn't make it through intact. Some of them died from drug overdoses. Some chose a different path in life other than staying with the church. And there is a small handful of us who are still together in the gospel. And those friendships are priceless. And I still have friendships with others who are not of the faith, and they're priceless as well. I love it.
I was curious about the cars. You were talking about all the cars you've had. I was wondering, do you have a favorite or some favorites that you've had or some interesting ones you've had over the years?
A lot of interesting ones. My first car was a 1923 Chevy Standard.
Wow.
And I bought that in 1969, so it was old then, wooden wheels and a crank.
Really? Wooden wheels?
Wooden wheels. And you had to crank it, didn't have a starter. And nobody told me the proper way to manipulate, to use the crank. And you're supposed to hold that crank in a certain way so that if the car backfires, which they do, that the handle flies out of your hand. Well, I didn't know that, and it did backfire one time, and it broke my wrist. So then everybody said, well, don't you know? Well, yeah, now I do. That was an interesting car. I kept that for a while, and it's decided that, yeah, it was great. It was interesting. It was a curiosity, but I needed a car that was more practical. I owned 7 BMW 2002s. Loved that little car. One of them was a monster. My first BMW I got in 1976, and it was a 1971 Bavaria. Loved that car. That car I actually rolled, and that was an eye-opener as well. I won't go into it, but learned a lot. My favorite car that I have owned, probably my Porsche, 2004 Porsche Turbo. Discovered that I couldn't afford it. But I owned it for a while, and I can say, yes, I've owned my Porsche. I loved it, and then I let it go because the money from that became my new kitchen.
We all make choices like that.
Yeah, I've got to keep the wife happy.
That's great. Well, speaking of your wife, you have a wonderful wife, Carla. How'd you meet Carla?
Oh, this is a great story. Carla, let's see, I met Carla in 1987 or 8. And I married my first wife, whose name is Corey, in 1978. Together we had 3 beautiful daughters. And for reasons that nobody really even wants to hear, we divorced after 11 years, 8 years, 9 years. And we're great friends. You know, that's good. We've always stayed good friends. But at the time I met Carla, I was the single father with sole custody of my 3 daughters. Now, that was rare in those days. I had to fight for it. But even my wife agreed that I was the better parent, and I told her that if she would let me be the primary parent, that I would never keep them from her. And I've kept that because I want them to know their mother, and it's worked out. But I was a single father with 3 little girls, and I had to travel at that time, so we had a live-in nanny who took care of them. As I was an electrician, I had to go to Barstow and places, L.A. and so forth for the week, and I'd come back on the weekends. That didn't last a long time. But I met Carla through what the internet has replaced, and it was a personal ad in the Coast News, which was then known as the Beach News. And she wrote this ad in the voice of her daughter. My mommy's this and my mommy's that. And I thought, okay, I kind of cute. And one thing led to another, and we dated for 5 years before we got married. My wife, Carla, is a nurse. She has a master's degree in community health nursing. She was recruited from North County, San Diego, to take a position in Indianapolis, Indiana, at the Indianapolis University Medical Center. And she was going to run the women's program, which she did. That was late 1992. We were not married. And she said, I've taken this job. We should get married and all of us go. And I said, are you crazy? Why would I leave this area? I mean, you know, I suffer from myopia.
You got a point, though.
Yes. So I let her go. She left in December of 92. Right after the holidays in January of 93, I blubbered on the phone and said, meet me in Las Vegas. We'll get married. I'll sell my house and we'll come visit. We'll come and join you. And that's exactly what happened. And we kept another house that we had here because we knew we couldn't get in if we wanted to later. And we came back 16 years later. So we're here now, and home is still home. It's changed, but it's still home.
Now, what did you do in Indiana? Were you an electrician out there also?
I intended to be an electrician there because I had 23 years experience at that time, a pretty valuable trade. And I understood and had experience in all the most aspects of the trade, industrial, government work. And I was making, in 1993 when I left, I was making $26.50 an hour here doing government work. I went to Indianapolis and they offered me 14. And yet, though the cost of living is much lower there, 14 didn't appeal to me. And for some time I thought, it's time for me to stop making a living with my hands and make a living with my brain. And my brother said, you could sell ice to Eskimos. Why don't you sell? And so I did. I went into real estate, became a real estate broker, and then an investor in real estate. And for 16 years, I did that. I was a realtor and an investor, and I had a specialty from the very beginning. I thought, well, banks own real estate. So I started working for banks and selling their foreclosed properties in 1994, before it was sexy. And that served me very well. I had a niche. And when I formed my own company there in Indianapolis, I did some research and discovered nobody had the name Indianapolis Real Estate. So I took it and got that legally. And it was always kind of humorous to me. The guy from San Diego would come to Indianapolis and have Indianapolis Real Estate, but it worked.
Nobody registered that name ever.
No,
That's crazy.
Somebody else owns it now because I let it go.
What got you guys back out to California?
Well, we always planned to come back. We thought we'd be there for 8 years. It turned out to be 16 because so many things compelled it. Chief among them, I was making a good living, and I thought, I can see the goal. Give me until this time, and we'll go out there and we'd never have to work again. Well, life changes, of course, but we were there 16 years, and it was just time. It was time to come back. We had children out here. We also have one daughter in Manhattan, New York City, and one is still in Indianapolis, but we have 2 daughters here. And my heart's here, and so is my wife. She loves this area. So we came back in 2012, and for the next 3 or 4 years, I traveled back and forth to Indianapolis until I came to the realization that it was more work than it was worth in terms of our family, my wife, my relationship with her, and then of course summer came into our lives, our granddaughter, and so I knew I needed to be here, and I just continued that, and I've been a writer ever since.
I almost forgot about your mission in Hong Kong. I'm so curious to know what a mission in Hong Kong was like in the 70s.
It was magic. It was magic. When I received my mission call, I opened it up. at that time, they were sent in the mail, of course, and you never knew when it was going to come. I remember opening it and reading Hong Kong, and the thing that came to my mind was monkeys swinging in the trees, because I had no idea what it meant to go to Hong Kong. As a humorous little aside, before I left Hong Kong, I did see monkeys swinging in the trees because I went out in the mountains behind them. But Hong Kong was a cosmopolitan city of about 8 million. It is at that time it was a British colony, but it was China. It always has been, always will. There was British colony by means of a 99-year lease from the Chinese to the British. It was a very free and open city in terms of economics, financial, trade from every part of the world happened there on a big scale. I used to say that it's the best place to go broke saving money. I bought custom-made shoes for $20, and that sounds absurdly cheap now. It was what you'd pay for an average pair of shoes here now, but they were custom-made. And custom-made suits, 4-piece suits, jacket, a vest, and 2 pairs of pants, $90 out of Italian linen.
Oh.
It was fascinating, but the most fascinating thing about it, of course, was the culture and the people. The people I learned to love immediately. I saw parallels between many of the people who were flooding out of China at that time, trying to get away from the repression of Chairman Mao and his cultural revolution, which to many of them meant murder and death or starvation. They would come across the border with nothing but the shirt on their backs and find employment, and within 5 years they'd be thriving. They worked hard and they endured, they did hard things. And it reminded me so much of the people coming across our southern borders that I'd seen all my life and known and loved, because I got to know that they were good people looking for a better life. And I saw those parallels. And I understood what it meant for them to understand who they are. They're children of God. That God, the Father, and our Heavenly Mother look down upon them and want them to have the best things in life, just like He wants you and me. And when we were able to teach them that, they flourished. As missionaries, we didn't teach a lot of families, which was kind of discouraging, but our mission president said, no, you do that, do it. And all my life since that time, I've watched these people that we baptized, these teenagers. They grew up faithful in the gospel, they married in the temple and formed eternal families. And where there was, at the time I was there were 9 branches, small congregations in a city of 8 million. There are now 6 stakes, I think, which means there's 30,000, 40,000 members of the church there. And it is a great evidence to me of what the gospel means when people embrace it. Not only has the church grown, that's interesting, but what has happened is people's lives were changed for the better. Mm. And they taught this to their children and their children's children. And I've been back to Hong Kong since, as you know. I went when COVID broke out, against your advice. And I was able to meet with some. And it's with great sadness I've seen the fall of Hong Kong's freedom, because now it's under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party, and 2 of my friends were arrested for sedition. One of them still in jail. The other, Cardinal Zen, the Catholic cardinal who was once the Bishop of Hong Kong, 92 years old now. He was arrested as well. 92-year-old man, they threw him in jail.
What was he arrested for?
Sedition. Because he spoke out for freedom. So many lessons there. I just don't have time to talk about them. But yeah, so we would have dinner with, as missionaries, we were always asked for dinner, And we got to know people intimately, let's put it that way, and I came to love them deeply.
So we all know Lamar as a character. Tell us a character story to wrap up. Favorite story about you.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if it's the tiger shark on the bike. That could be
No,
the story.
the tiger shark on the bike is a good one. I'm going to tell you one that's vintage, though.
All right.
In the middle of downtown Solana Beach, there is a fountain, a large brass and work of art that is a fountain. And you may not know that it's a fountain because it's never seen water. And
I'm trying to think, where is it?
it's right in the middle of, it's on the west side of Highway 101. And if you're waiting at the lights there to go to the beach, you go across, and it's immediately there on your left in the middle of that. That's a fountain.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a work of art, right? It's
Yeah.
a fountain. And at the time I was a kid, water wasn't exorbitantly expensive like it is now, and sometimes scarce. And it was constantly flowing. Well, I had a paper route, something that's also disappeared for young people. And I would be out at 5 in the morning throwing papers around. At that time, I guess I was about 12 years old. It would have been about 1965. There was a product called Salvo, and it was a laundry detergent that looked like a hockey puck. You just throw it in, just throw it in. Well, I loaded my canvas newspaper bag with Salvo, and my friend Louis Foder and I emptied them into that fountain. And there were pictures in the newspapers, stories. Nobody ever broadcast who it was. My friends know who it was that did it, but there were suds all over the street, everywhere. And we just laughed. So as I've taught young people in the church, I've never told them that story, but I always have encouraged them to go out and get into some clean, legal mischief.
Clean mischief. Okay, we'll remember that mantra from Lamar.
Clean
Get into
mischief.
Clean mischief.
Have some fun.
You got
Choose the right kind.
What's the best wisdom? What's the best Lamar wisdom for youth today?
Know who you are. You are a child of the Creator of heaven and earth. And as such, as any child can become like his parent, so can we. But we need to work at it. And the best thing to help you get there is love. Love. Love everyone. There's great wisdom in what the Lord has asked us to do. Love everyone. Withhold judgment. And remember that you ain't so tough.
That's awesome. Well, thanks. I had fun visiting with you today, Lamar. I know there's a lot of stories, and maybe folks that want to come and ask you some more stories afterwards, but it's fun to listen to you. I really appreciate making the time.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, see you.